Welcome to Everyday Cooking with Ann. It's the fall season and we're getting prepared for Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner. We're going to be making today pumpkin praline pie. Actually, this is a recipe that you're going to be making with me for the first time, so we'll see how it turns out. What you're going to do differently than other pumpkin pie recipes is that you're going to be pre-baking your pie crust ahead of time because we are going to be cooking part of the filling before we put it in. So we're going to if you need the recipe for my pie crust, you can go to my Never Fail pie crust dough recipe on my channel. Learn how to make this crust. I've already gone and rolled out the crust, put it in my pie plate, and I put it in my freezer for about 20 minutes because you want to have a nice cold buttered crust so that it is a flaky, wonderful crust. Okay, what we're going to do to pre-bake this pie crust is I'm going to put a little bit of aluminum foil in the bottom of my crust. And you can use pie weights, beans, rice, whatever you want, but at least 2 cups of this is going to help hold the crust so that it doesn't shrink down. So I'm going to put my beans in here. These are the beans I use just for my pies as pie weights. I'm going to put those in here. I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees. I'm going to put this pie crust in for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then I'm going to take it out and show you what we do next with the pie crust. Now we're going to be making the pumpkin praline filling, and we want to puree the first part of it, but let me tell you all the ingredients that go in the filling first. First of all, we have about 15 ounces of a pureed canned pumpkin, 3/4 cup of dark brown sugar. We have a teaspoon each of cinnamon and ground ginger, half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of ground allspice, and a pinch of ground cloves. This is in the first part of the recipe that we will puree. Then we'll be adding a cup of carnation evaporated milk, 3 eggs, and also 2 teaspoons of vanilla will be added into that. We'll be cooking this part of the pie. On top of the pie, which is the praline, we will be having a half a cup of dark brown sugar, a whole cup of finely chopped pecans, a tablespoon of regular sugar, and some Caro syrup, maybe a couple of teaspoons of that. Okay, those are the ingredients. Oh, and we will be adding some of the vanilla into the praline topping as well. So that's double duty. Okay, so let's get started. Before we want to start with pureeing in my Ninja, which I have a metal blade for. So I'm going to put this all in here. Now the reason we're pureeing this is just to make sure if there's any stringy sections of the pie, of the pumpkin that might be there, so we don't want to have that. We're going to add the brown sugar, and we will go ahead and get the ingredients for the spices. 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, like I mentioned. And 2 teaspoons of ginger. By the way, pumpkin pie is probably my favorite dessert, and I have tried so many recipes. This is a half a teaspoon of salt, a half a teaspoon of allspice. All my favorite fall spices are going in this pie, because like I said, it is my favorite pie. We're trying this one. I want to see if this one will become my new favorite. We're going to just sprinkle in a little bit of cloves. And that's all we need right now to do the puree. Put this on here. Okay, the next step, which is different than most pumpkin pies, is that we are going to just cook this on the stove for about 4 minutes at about medium-high heat. Very slowly, just let it cook together, okay? And then we'll be adding our milk and eggs and vanilla in a little bit. So right now, I'm just going to put this in. I still have my pie baking in the oven. I want to make sure that our crust is going to be warm. If for some reason you want to make your pie crust ahead of time, go ahead and do that. It'll keep for one day at least, and then you can just warm it back in the oven when you're ready to put your pie filling in. And I'll show you how we're going to finish the pie crust in just a moment. But here we are. I'm going to be stirring this off and on for about 4 minutes, and then we'll put the rest of the ingredients when I get back. My pie crust I had in the oven for about 10-15 minutes. Actually, it was 15 minutes, and so now I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to remove the dried beans from the crust. And you see how nicely that kept that crust in the right kind of shape. And now I'm going to prick the bottom of the crust so that it can bake too for another 10-15 minutes until it's just lightly browned. Okay, our pumpkin mixture has been kind of sputtering on the stove for about 4 minutes to kind of cook down a little bit. The reason we did this is to make it so it's not too thin, and mostly in other pumpkin pies you have a very thin filling that has to cook for 45 minutes. And with this one you don't have to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my 1 cup, and you can see how just beautiful, dark and spicy this pie crust looks. I'm going to go ahead and add in this pie filling looks. My evaporated milk. I'm going to remove this from the heat right now. You know, I've tried lots of different milk fillings in pumpkin pie, and my favorite still is the evaporated milk, which, you know, is on the back of the Libby's can, which is another version of pumpkin pie you can always make. It's probably the most popular, famous pumpkin pie recipe in the world. But we're trying something new. Okay, I'm now going to go ahead and put in the 3 beaten eggs. And this will have to cook down a little bit too. Putting in 2 teaspoons of vanilla flavoring. I always use the real deal, pure vanilla, not imitation. And now all I'm doing at this point right now, this is the filling. I'm waiting for my crust to come out of the oven, and you want to have, if you bake your crust a day ahead of time, you need to put it back in the oven to warm it up, because you want to have the warm filling into the pie crust that's already warm as well. And then we're going to be baking it a little while longer until the pumpkin is completely set. The pecan topping while our pie is baking in the oven. We've got a whole cup of finely chopped pecans, and a pinch of salt, and our half a cup of brown sugar. And this is something you can just mix together with your fingers. Now, this is kind of fun actually. I like to do anything that I get my hands into. And I'm not going to measure this out, but you put in a couple of teaspoons of the dark corn syrup and a teaspoon of our vanilla. I'm just going to eyeball it. And now you're going to use your fingers and make this all kind of wet and this is going to be kind of a spicy, dark pie. You saw the filling, it's darker than most pumpkin pie fillings. So, and this pecan sugar topping, we'll be also putting on top of the pie when it comes out a little bit of sprinkling of white sugar as well. So we're going to wait for this to come out of the oven in another probably 30 minutes. And then we'll be putting this in the oven with the pecans on top for another 10 minutes until the pecans are nice and fragrant. Okay, our next step is pie crust has been baking another extra 10 minutes now, and it looks golden brown now. And we're going to go ahead at this point and add our pumpkin pie filling right into the crust. Now this pie here is, even though we've cooked it down a little bit, this will be cooking for another 35 minutes at 350 degrees. And then while we're waiting for this to finish baking up, we are going to make the pecan streusel topping. Okay, I'm going to put this back in the oven. I'm going to go ahead and put this pie shield on top of here This protects the crust a little bit so it doesn't get too brown while we have it in the oven, and we'll put this in for 35 more minutes at 350 degrees until it cracks a little bit and it's puffy and done on the inside. Just removed it from the oven and it seems like it's very done. It's been cooking for about 30 minutes. I tested it just with my hand and it's nice, and it's not jiggly, it's not wet. We took most of the moisture out in the first place. Okay, so what we're going to do now is go ahead and I'm going to sprinkle on this pecan topping that we made ahead of time all around the entire pie. Just sprinkle it on. As soon as we put it back in the oven, it'll kind of melt into place. It's very fragrant, by the way. If you love pumpkin, you're going to love this. Now remember, we made this topping out of some carob syrup, dark brown sugar again, and butter. Okay, so we want the pecans to kind of toast a little bit, so we are now going to put this back in our oven for 10 more minutes to kind of meld into the rest of the pie. It looks amazing already. Okay, my buzzer just rang. It's been 10 minutes. I'm going to take out our pecan topped pie, and I'm sure it needs to kind of settle down and cool. I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle a little bit of the white sugar that I had prepared on top to kind of meld into the pie. And when it's completely cool, I'm going to show you how I would serve it with my homemade whipped cream. So I'll check with you later and show you the final product as it's ready to eat. Okay, this is our final pumpkin praline pie. It has our nuts all caramelized on the top of the pie. Here's the pumpkin filling. I did accidentally put 2 teaspoons of ginger in it, and instead of 1, which should never have happened, but I took a little taste of this, and it tastes really rich and really delicious. I'm going to try it again right now. This is a winner. It is nice and dark and spicy. A little different than most pumpkin pie. It is really delicious, especially with the whipped cream on top to set off the spice. And the crust is really nice and flaky. I hope you enjoy this recipe and try it for this Thanksgiving. Those of you who like my videos, I would appreciate it if you would share with your friends during the Thanksgiving holidays. And also subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.